Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. As I waited to enter the scanner, something happened to me that I'd never experienced before or since. I experienced the sensation of a great light encompassing me, as if I were being visited by an unearthly person. I felt surrounded by a swarm of golden angels and enveloped by a halo of gold light. Continue to follow me at this point and have an open mind to the idea that this could happen. I'd never seen anything like that, and my personal belief system was being tested at this point. At the moment, I was hearing a clear voice in my head that sounded like my intuition. The voice assured me that I need not be concerned and that I was being cared after. There was no need to be concerned because I would survive this experience unscathed. The calm and soothing voice informed me that I would be subjected to 3 scans. The first would yield a disastrous effect, and I was told not to worry about it. The second scan would be more accurate and indicate progress. The third scan I'd have would be clear. I'd publish a book about it to help inspire others all across the world. I came up with this notion since I had a large platform and will write about it one day, just like I'm doing now. This part of the story felt like a supernatural visitation, with precise instructions on what would happen to me. I don't have a template or words to express how I felt. It appeared to me that I was visited by golden angels, who were there to assure me that I was safe and that I would survive this experience. I'll never forget how I felt during this encounter, and it'll most certainly stick with me for the rest of my life. From that point forward, I felt powerful, fearless, and hopeful about what was ahead on this perilous path. All of my fear had fled my body, and I could no longer access those feelings. I later discovered that this is a common component of NDE experiences. Life is lived differently when there is no fear. It helps me to live in an exciting, adventure-filled way that reminds me of the wonder I felt as a child. Scan outcomes. We had to wait a while for the MRI scan findings to arrive. I felt it easier to wait for findings now that my golden visitors had told me what the conclusion would be. I remember not feeling nervous or worried during this period for 2 reasons. 1, I had the impression that I was being washed over by a higher power and that all should work out in the end. 2nd, I had no fear of death. I was unconcerned about dying, and if I was destined to die, I was fine with it. So I had 2 options: live on Earth or live on in spirit form, and I was completely pleased with either. My hospital room had a terrace with a view of Ibiza's lovely old town. Outside, there was great music flowing out, which made its way into my chamber. Ibiza has always had amazing music, and my room was no exception this time. I had a number of pals from the island swing by and visit me. Many people purchased guitars, carpets to create a calm space, and comfortable cushions. On the terrace, we created an Ibiza chill-out zone. I had so many visitors that we had to make a timetable of who was coming and when so that the place didn't become too congested. Even the nursing staff came in smiling and asked if we were having a celebration. I responded, "We were, indeed." People around me said I was handling this situation well and seemed optimistic for someone in this predicament. I knew I'd be okay and thrive because the angels had told me so. But I didn't expect people to share my optimism or believe my outlandish story of angels visiting me and telling me everything would be fine. I died and abandoned my body on that day. It was around 8 a.m. on a Thursday morning in Ibiza. I was lying in my bed, alone in my room, which was unusual. I closed my eyes as I sat up in bed. I felt an odd sensation around the crown of my skull. I had the sensation that my spirit was leaving my body. A gray swirl of energy seemed to be collecting momentum at the top of my skull and being sucked up towards the sky. It was a sensation I'd never felt before. I wondered whether my spirit was attempting to exit my body. I muscle tested the answer, and it was a resounding yes. At this point, I felt as though I was about to enter the next realm. This seemed to be a watershed event in my life. I began to take deeper breaths and reflected on the high points of my life. I had lived a good-intentioned life. I had made mistakes. There were mistakes that I would correct if given the chance again, and there was great affection for the people I loved. Then I had the impression that I needed to stop myself, my spirit, from leaving my body. I jumped out of bed and rushed straight to the nurse's station. It was early morning and I was alone in my room. It was unusual for me to be alone because I was constantly visited. But this day was early and before any visitors had arrived. The nurses were gathered for their daily meeting when I approached the nurse's station outside of my room in the ward. They were going over the patient's paperwork and making plans of the day. I charged up to them and disrupted their conversation. "Please, I need to speak with you. It's critical." "How are you, Susie?" inquired my favorite nurse. "I believe I'm going to die. Today, please keep an eye on me. I'm going to die very soon. I can sense it." "Susie, you're not going to die. We'll take care of you and keep an eye on you to ensure your safety. Please don't be concerned. We'll be with you shortly," the compassionate nurse explained. The issue was that I knew I was going to die any minute. The nurses in these oncology wards are exceptional people. Working with cancer patients is difficult. They are caring for people who are losing their desire to live, frequently vomiting and experiencing severe periods of losing control of both ends of their bodies as a result of the chemo treatment's intensity. It was common for a patient on the ward to die. I have a lot of regard and respect for these great people that do this for a living. They keep smiling and acting happy despite the fact that everyone around them is in pain and going through a difficult period. The nurses approached me in my room. They collected blood and tested my temperature, blood pressure, and heart rate. This was a routine practice that occurred at regular times throughout the day and night. I felt a little more grounded when I went back into bed, but my spirit was still tugging at me and attempting to escape my body. I felt a swoosh as I sat upright on the bed, and it was as if my spirit was leaving my body in a straight funnel upwards, headed towards where I thought paradise to be. What occurred when I passed away? I don't know how long it was when I was out of my body and out of my head and floating high. I left the bag of bones that is my flesh and body and became spirit, as it felt to me like a hazy wisp of energy. This is akin to what people mean when they talk about getting into the flow by creatively experiencing this sense of losing sight of time and space. The following stage was my travel around the universe as a spirit. This was the scene from a Hollywood film about what happens when you die. My body lay immobile like a shell as I died in this life and my spirit departed me. I became one with all the stars in the sky. I had a sense of oneness with everything as I left my body. It was like soaring across the universe, seeing the various forms that exist in life. Everything is formed of energy, and everything is related. On the way out of my body, I could see this plainly. I'm not sure how long I was gone. Time was not something I could measure. I was shown what the universe is like without a body. It's like being in outer space with a sense of everything and an overwhelming sense of love. This is how I imagined being an angel felt, I would find out later. There is no time in this space on the other side. I discovered that everything happens at the same time and that time is something we invent. I recall distinctly being given the option of returning to my body. I was asked if I wanted to stay out of my body and thoughts, or return to my body. I recall asking to return to my body when I was out of it. I received the impression that there was more for me to do here. My baby was still young and would require my molding hand in the future, and I felt I had more work to do in this life, in this body. I knew I could return, which was reassuring while this was going on. It felt like I was only gone for a short period, but so much happened in that time. The most clear memory I have of leaving my body and being shown around the cosmos is learning that it is an energy-based universe in which everything is interconnected. I already knew the theory behind this because I had written a book about energy and life a few years before, Instructions for Happiness and Success. I had researched science and old wisdom about the nature of the universe and came to the conclusion that it was built on energy. I read a lot of quantum physics and quantum mechanics literature while researching my book on energy. I was familiar with the ideas and modern understandings of awareness and connection, but on this excursion out of my body, I saw how it looked from the top looking down. I saw this with my own eyes and realized that we are energy beings emitting frequency and vibrating all over the place. A change in one part of the universe has an impact on the entire system. I've seen how this works. I know this is difficult to grasp and comprehend. I am reporting what occurred to me, and it is an experience that will be with me for the rest of my life. It's a rare and amazing treat to pass through the curtain of existence and then return to the body. I was fearless and unafraid of it. I believe that we are all cared for and that there is life after death, albeit in a different form. I consider myself fortunate that this incident occurred and that I was able to share all of the stories shared here. I was being shown and experiencing the other side while yet being able to return as a fully functioning human being. I recall being asked expressly if I wanted to return to my body, and I realized this was a decision point. If I said yes, I'd be reconnected with my body and able to start over. If I answered no at this point, there would be no turning back, and I would be lost forever with no way back. I made my decision. It was simple. I had a little boy who still required my presence in his life. He was far too young to have lost his mother. I knew I could be healed if I returned to my body. It was as if the angels had told me I might have a clear scan and return to my body, realigned and disease-free. This is exactly what occurred. When I re-entered my body, I felt like a whoosh and I was entering the framework that is my body. I felt very different as I opened my eyes again and turned around. Things appeared different. My life appeared different, and my emotions were different and clearer. The most evident difference I noticed when I returned was a lack of fear. Even though I tried, I couldn't touch the emotion of terror. It was as if the fear program had vanished. I was completely fearless. I felt brave and mentally strong. I felt wiser and more appreciative of things. I felt I shouldn't talk about it too much because people would think I'd gone utterly insane, even more so than I'd been acting. I didn't inform many people about what had occurred. What had happened, I told my best mate and my pal Gavin in London. Gavin reminded me of a conversation we had while I was in the hospital, when I was describing heaven to him. It's difficult to tell folks you've died and returned. If someone says this, there is disbelief and no easy response. I didn't want to notify the nursing staff because I was trying to appear well and sane so that I could get out of here. I returned with full courage and no fear installed as a new piece of upgraded software. In that experience of going and returning, I had the impression that my own mind operating software had received a significant upgrade. Because I suddenly began seeing the world differently, my life would never be the same again. I felt more sympathy for others and was slower to cast judgment because many around me were simply working with what they had in terms of ideas, programs, and experiences. In this out-of-body experience, I realized how crucial intentions are. I saw directly with my own eyes that when you think a thought, set an intention, or set a goal, all of the smaller matter in the cosmos works together to make that happen. One example is when I set the intention to return to my body after being out of it. I set the intention, and then I was back in my body in an instant. I had the reassuring awareness that when I returned to my body, I had been programmed to heal completely. Going out of my body and back in was the healing I required to produce extraordinary results that even doctors couldn't explain. This escape and re-entry would validate the Golden Angel story. I would recover totally from an aggressive brain tumor. I felt there was more to life for me, and I loved my small kid so much that I wanted to watch him grow up and find his own place in the world. I also understood that if I returned to my physical body, the angel story would become my genuine reality creation. I needed to be fearless for the following step in order to get through all that was going to happen. Perhaps we have more say over when we die than we know. I recall my mother being ready to leave her body. She was in her 80s and in critical condition. She was about to leave when she learned that her granddaughter Jo would be returning from Italy a few days later. She waited for Jo to return for a few days, and then she died quietly after seeing her granddaughter for the last time when she returned home from her travels. I recall learning on my mother's deathbed that she opted to stay a bit longer and postpone her death to see her family one final time. I knew I would be healed once I resolved to stay in this life. This was something I was confident of. I was certain that I didn't require any additional testing, blood tests, injections, or medicines. I knew I'd be healed. My work with Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, Theta Healing, and the other fields of mind science I had been researching in depth had taught me the value of belief and intentions. Now, I have first-hand experience without a body to understand how powerful this is as a human capability.